To what would you attribute this bullish trading that we saw at the T-bills markets to?
Okay, at the start of the week, it was initially bearish, but due to the maturities, Treasury bills maturities of about 780 billion, we now saw a bullish trend in the market. And since it's the beginning of the year, traders are taking position, selling short-term maturities and buying to build positions. And we expect to see this trend to continue into the new week.
Talk to us about the system liquidity and how that played out this week with the OMO maturities and the mop-ups on the part of the CBN.
Well, liquidity has been very, very, very tight. We've seen CBN mopping regularly whenever there is any maturity, and then traders continue to sell to create liquidity.
Creating that liquidity, is that why we saw a lot of activity on the short end?
Short end, yes, for the secondary market.
For the secondary market.
Short and medium end in the secondary market. But in the primary market, focus is actually on the long tenured bills. We've seen players buying a lot of long tenured bills in the primary market.
So for the new week, what are your expectations in terms of liquidity at the market and the mop-up activities of the CBN?
Well, this week is going to close tight, but in the new week, we will see liquidity inching up a bit because the expectations that FAC may come in next week, and there is also an OMO maturity of about 381 billion next week. That will inject more capital into the system. However, the CBN will continue with its tightening stance of mopping up. So we may see maybe one or two OMO maturity, sales in the new week.
What can we expect as far as the yield curve is concerned in the new week?
The yield curve, we expect that it will trade within the same range because in the OMO sales that we've seen, the results have shown that all the rates have been maintained, whereas in the NTB that was done sometime this week, we noticed that in the short tenured maturity, rates went up a bit from 10.98 to 11%, while in the long end, it each up by 50 basis points from 14.5 to 15%, matching what we have in the OMO issuance. So we expect rates to remain relatively stable.
When you say relatively stable, I know that we've seen effective rates as high as 17%. And that has been the trend, at least in the last week. Can we expect that to continue in the new week?
In the new week, yes. Despite the liquidity that we will see, it may continue in that trend.
Let's move over now to the FX market, especially the INE window. What played out this week in terms of the forces of demand and supply, if the CBN was able to match demand at the market?
The CBN has done very well in that space. The FX rate has remained relatively stable. The INE window closed at 362.69 yesterday, and we noticed during the week it's been trading within a range of 360, 365. And it hasn't inched up to 370 that we saw last year in December. So the CBN has been intervening weekly to ensure that the rates are relatively stable. And to a large extent, it has remained relatively stable and given kind of confidence even to the foreign investors who would like to inject flows into the economy.
I was speaking to a trader yesterday, and he did tell me that he's actually been seeing more FPI, more inflows coming from foreign portfolio investors. Despite, we saw that the headwinds from last year and the expected headwinds this year, especially being in an election year. But he says that it would appear that investors are a little more comfortable with bringing in some cash. Is that what you've seen too?
Yes, I believe so, because there are speculations that there were some foreign inflows this week into the system, and that's why we saw some activities in the fixed income space. Even we also noticed that there were some activities in some long-tenured bonds, especially 2034, 2028, and 2021. And their speculations is as a result of foreign demand, foreign investor demand.
Okay, Nkechi, finally, what are your expectations for next week's MPC meeting?
Next week's MPC meeting, they'll be considering either to hold, tighten, or to or to they'll consider either to tighten or loosen. So the CBN for a while, in the past, let me say about 2 years, they've been tightening, and we believe that that has been working because the focus of the CBN is to ensure price and exchange stability, and to a large extent, all the policies that they've been implementing have been working, and we've seen relative stability in price and exchange rates, and we believe that rates will be maintained. Okay. However, some policy members may vote that for rates to be reduced, but we'll see how it plays out in next week's meeting.
Absolutely, we're keeping our fingers crossed too. Thank you, Nkechi, for talking to us today.